Tyr, the one-handed god of war and justice. Long before the dawn of man, before even the great halls of Asgard stood in the heavens, there were forces older than time itself. Chaos and order, destruction and creation, war and peace. Among these forces rose a god whose name would be spoken with reverence by warriors and kings alike. A god whose sacrifice would shape the fate of gods and mortals. His name was Tyr, the one-handed god of war and law. A child of order and war. The origins of Tyr are shrouded in mystery. Some say he was the son of Odin, the All-Father, born to lead the gods in battle and uphold justice among them. Others claim he was even older than Odin himself, one of the ancient deities who governed war long before the Aesir came into power. Regardless of his lineage, Tyr was destined for greatness. From a young age, Tyr showed remarkable skill in battle. While Thor wielded brute strength and Mjolnir's destructive power, Tyr possessed something far greater: strategy, wisdom, and the will to fight for justice rather than conquest. He was the war god who sought not bloodshed for its own sake, but rather the honor and necessity of combat. War to Tyr was not chaos. It was the forge where strength was tested, and only the worthy emerged victorious. But Tyr's role among the gods was more than that of a warrior. He was also the guardian of law, the one who ensured that oaths were honored, justice was upheld, and the gods remained bound by their own words. Unlike the trickster Loki, who bent the truth and reveled in deception, Tyr embodied the unwavering truth of justice, no matter how harsh. The wolf and the sacrifice. The most famous tale of Tyr, the one that defined his legacy for eternity, was the story of Fenrir, the monstrous wolf. Born of Loki and the giantess Angerboda, Fenrir was no ordinary beast. From the moment of his birth, the gods sensed something dark within him. He grew at an unnatural rate, his strength surpassing that of any mortal or god alike. His hunger was insatiable, and his eyes burned with intelligence. He was no mindless creature, but a being of great power, aware of his own destiny. The gods knew that one day, Fenrir would bring about Ragnarok, the end of all things. But they could not kill him, for he was still bound by fate, and no god could slay him without dooming themselves. Instead, they sought to bind him before his power became uncontrollable. At first, they fashioned chains of iron, great links forged by the finest smiths of Asgard. Laughing, Fenrir allowed them to bind him, only to shatter the chains with ease. Again, they tried, using even stronger materials, but the wolf broke free time and time again. Desperate, the gods turned to the dwarves, the greatest craftsmen in all the realms. From the roots of mountains, the breath of fish, the sound of a cat's footsteps, and the beard of a woman, they forged Gleipnir, a ribbon-thin chain with unbreakable power. It was as light as silk but stronger than any force in the cosmos. When the gods presented it to Fenrir, the wolf was suspicious. He had broken all chains before, yet this one did not appear strong at all. "I will not be bound so easily," he growled. "If this is truly a test of my strength, let one of you place their hand in my mouth as a sign of good faith." The gods hesitated, for they knew the danger. But then Tyr stepped forward, his expression calm, his eyes resolute. "I will do it," he declared. Placing his right hand in Fenrir's enormous jaws, Tyr stood firm as the gods secured the unbreakable chain around the beast. The moment Fenrir realized he had been tricked, he bit down, shearing Tyr's hand from his body. Blood poured from the wound, but Tyr did not flinch. He did not cry out in pain. He simply stood, his face as still as the stone of Yggdrasil's roots. Fenrir howled in rage, but the gods had won. The monster was bound, and Tyr's sacrifice ensured the safety of the realms. With a single act, Tyr had proven that honor and duty outweighed even his own flesh and blood. The god of law among mortals. While Odin was the all-seeing ruler of Asgard and Thor was the mightiest warrior, it was Tyr who influenced the world of men the most. Long before the Viking Age, even before the rise of the great kingdoms, The name of Tyr was whispered among the Germanic tribes. He was known as Tawaz, the god who guided warriors into battle not for the sake of slaughter, but for the sake of justice. In those times, war was not merely about conquest. It was about honor, oaths, and the balance of order in the world. The ancient people named a day after him, Tuesday, Tiw's Day, so that even as centuries passed, his influence remained. Kings would invoke Tyr's name before making difficult judgments. Warriors would carve his rune into their swords, believing that it would grant them not just victory, but a righteous cause to fight for. Tyr was the god of those who stood between chaos and order, those who made the hard choices not because they wanted to, but because they must. The final battle, Ragnarok. As time passed, the prophecies of Ragnarok grew closer. Tyr, like all the gods, knew that his fate was sealed. He would meet his end in battle against Garm, the great wolf of hell, guardian of the underworld. When Ragnarok began, the heavens split apart, and fire rained from the sky. Fenrir, finally freed from his bonds, roared across the battlefield, while the armies of the dead marched upon the living. Amidst the chaos, Tyr faced his final challenge. Garm, the monstrous hound, charged at him, fangs bared, eyes glowing like burning coals. Their battle was fierce, their clash shaking the 9 realms. Steel met Fong, blood met earth, and neither combatant yielded. In the end, Tyr slayed the beast, but not before suffering a fatal wound. As he fell, he knew he had fulfilled his duty one last time. He had upheld balance until the very end. Tyr's legacy. Though the gods perished in Ragnarok, their stories lived on. Tyr's legacy remained not as a conqueror, but as a symbol of sacrifice, honor, and justice. His teachings lived in the hearts of those who sought truth over deception, duty over desire. Even today, his influence lingers. Every time a warrior fights not for bloodlust but for righteousness. Every time a leader makes a difficult decision for the greater good. Every time someone upholds an oath even when it costs them dearly, the spirit of Tyr endures. For Tyr was more than a god. He was the very embodiment of what it meant to stand for justice, no matter the cost.